We now move into part 2 of structure, how to effectively structure your meetings and key elements of group dynamics to pay attention to. For this section, we have Wendy Huber, who serves as rector for St. Barnabas in Glenwood Springs and partnership vicar at St. John's Newcastle and All Saints Battlement Mesa, and sheepdog to these 3 wonderful churches. She spent a prior career in training and teaching, focusing on conflict resolution and management. I think of her as the Energizer sheepdog. She seems to have an endless supply of energy when it comes to helping others to do transformative work at all levels of the church and life. Wendy, welcome. And thank you for all that you do and how you're going to help us to better understand how to structure our meetings with agendas and how to pay attention to those group dynamics. So can you tell us, how can we do this well?
Well, as you heard from Brooks, meeting as a vestry is an opportunity to transform your church as well as yourselves. Many of us groan at the thought of yet another meeting in our already busy schedules. And yet we are a meeting society in a world made up of small groups who come together to share information, to plan, to solve problems, to criticize, praise, worship, make new decisions, find out what went wrong with old decisions. We need meetings to function. And it's important that we recall the words of Jesus always in Matthew chapter 18, verse 20. For where 2 or 3 have gathered together in my name, I am there in their midst. By grounding your work as an extension of the work of the church to share the good news of Jesus Christ, you will honor Jesus. Meetings are a necessary part of your work together as a vestry or bishop's committee. Having some expectations and ground rules for meeting management can make your time together productive and faithful. It can be helpful to have a model for how to structure your meetings and develop your agendas so that the time spent allows you to focus on that which is most important and also fulfill your responsibilities. Meeting management includes the preparation of an agenda and developing group norms and expectations, as well as the actual management of the vestry or bishop's committee meeting. Unlike the typical business meeting, the vestry is charged with the spiritual and financial well-being of a congregation and the organization, and the focus of the meeting is first on God and then on business. An in-person meeting is often the best way to communicate information to others in a group where face-to-face interaction is necessary. In our busy world, we tend to avoid in-person meetings in favor of email or even texts or tweets. And we all know the experience of receiving a text or email from someone, and without the voice or the body language accompanying the message, we receive a very different message than that was sent. My late mother was an early email adopter, and we often corresponded regularly by email. And one day I received an anxious reply to an email that I had earlier sent to her. "Why are you yelling at me?" she asked. And I wrote back, shocked, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You sent me an entire email in all caps. You were yelling." And had we been in person, we might never have that moment of anxiety and upset about all caps email. And so you see, meetings are necessary for many reasons. It's also clear that a group can also develop solutions collectively that the members could not have come up with as individuals. A good starting point is to develop a clear set of group norms and expectations. You should take the time each year to develop some of those expectations. Your group norms will always be a place to fall back on as you work together.
So how often should vestries or bishops' committees meet? And what about agendas?
When you're thinking about determining whether you need to have a meeting, you should first look at your own bylaws and determine what they say about frequency of meetings. Some meet monthly, some meet as infrequently as quarterly, and some meet weekly if there are many pending issues requiring the attention and leadership of the church. Preparation of the agenda is typically done with the senior warden or bishop's warden and the rector or vicar working together. And if possible, the agenda and any written attachment should be provided to the vestry before the meeting, so vestry members may consider those items being proposed or reported on. So considering whether a meeting is appropriate and necessary may be helpful for leaders, and there's a simple little test, a simple tool, the 4P analysis, that is sometimes helpful to determine the appropriateness and necessity for a meeting. The first P is the purpose, and should be clearly identified with the concerns or problems or decisions or work that needs to be completed. And once you determine that you have a purpose, the other 3 are participants, properties, and a plan. So remember, purpose, that's why you're meeting, and then the next P is the participants. Those are all the people necessary to make decisions so that they are available at the time designated. And the third P is that property, what resources, what facilities, what materials are needed to accomplish the goals of your meeting. And finally, the plan. Could this work or decision be accomplished through other communications? And once you decide that you're going to conduct a meeting, there is some consideration for how you'll actually organize your meeting time together.
I've read about different ways to structure vestry agendas. Can you explain a little bit about the difference between a typical agenda and a more mission-minded or mission-focused agenda?
Absolutely. Some elements of a typical vestry agenda might include a clear start and end time, which allows the participants to plan accordingly and focus their discussion. A request for written reports where appropriate is so important because that valuable vestry time is not used in regular reporting that was done in writing. An opportunity for formation as a vestry, some may use a Bible study, is a way to begin your work together, and we'll consider in a few moments some agenda options. You might use an executive session to consider personnel matters, and in this new era, the vestry and leadership groups are going to seek to give the congregation the gift of more missional leadership. And the governance function of the agenda would be more concentrated, allowing greater time for the development of an atmosphere of discipleship and formation in the church, so that the people will be equipped to serve the world in the name of Christ. An example of a more missional focused meeting agenda might be as follows. The first 30 minutes you might start together and focus on gathering, maybe through Bible study and prayer. And the minutes are typically approved as distributed with corrections received at the time, so it takes no time. And then in a short 5 or 10 minutes, you have the financial report. And using language that is accessible to all with an executive summary, then the financial report highlights key points and any matters that need action. And there is a norm to be honored that you stay focused in your discussion. Generally, financial positions can be discussed, or they could be discussed in discipleship or mission where appropriate. Then the next 10 or 15 minutes, you might have an activity of the parish that forms disciples. You might focus on worship, formation, or fellowship, or generosity, some people call fellowship. You might receive and discuss discipleship-related reports or matters pending from previous meetings pertaining to discipleship. The next 15 or 30 minutes, or 15 to 30 minutes, might engage in more mission action. And that is the sort of action that will send the baptized out into the world. And that might include service or financial support, or evangelism, social justice, and at that point, you can discuss or receive mission-related reports that are pending from a prior meeting or new to this meeting. And then you move to a short, maximum 10 minutes, that you're going to discuss sort of the catch-all area. And that's anything that doesn't fit into the agenda anywhere else, maybe from a prior meeting. And then the last 30 minutes, you hold a mini leadership school. You take that opportunity to focus on that element of leadership for study and reflection for your work together. And your last minute, you are being sent into the world to be a blessing and servant to others.
So how long should a typical vestry or bishops' committee meeting last, using either a typical or a mission-minded agenda?
Using those rough guidelines that we just went through, either should be conducted in about an hour and a half to 2 hours, unless significant or critical issues have surfaced.
So I know that group dynamics are really important and often overlooked. Can you help us to better understand how those group dynamics can be brought into creating high-functioning teams?
Absolutely. Once your meeting begins, it's important to be familiar with and use best practices in regard to group development and dynamics. And anytime someone joins or leaves a group, the group changes. And so every year we have members cycle off and cycle on into these leadership roles, and we need to be attentive to saying thank you to those leaving and allowing orientation for our new members. So we need to pay attention to the energy and data needs of our group. Some are more extroverted, some are more introverted. Some we need to allow some time for quiet, small group conversation, as well as a free-for-all style of brainstorming. Some members are going to be more driven by concrete, while others are more interested in vision and concepts. Some are going to want to move quickly to a decision, and others are going to want time to pursue all the possibilities. And finally, with group decision making, it's important to understand if you want the group to fully back the decision or the vision or the direction, you may need to make sure that that work is done in a full session, not put off for an executive session. Meetings should begin and end in prayer. And we are so fortunate with our prayer book that provides a number of appropriate prayers for use in meetings. If you're well prepared and lovingly interact with one another, you will be successful even when there are conflict-laden topics to be discussed. So remember, pray, plan, and pray some more for effective and fruitful meetings.
Wendy, thank you so much. This is so helpful and so important and often overlooked. You may pause the video here and go deeper in this area. Please review Module 5, Vestry Agendas, to explore how your vestry or bishops' committee currently organizes its meetings and ways you may wish to adjust it. And Module 6, Group Dynamics, to review the ways you attend to the dynamics of the group when members enter and leave it, and how you handle decision-making in the group.